Notre Dame is number one.
Notre Dame with a miracle win as a
He's going in. Notre Dame has scored.
The 24-hour rule was firmly imposed after a great win against Stanford. A lot of emotion. Really proud of the way our guys competed. And competitive greatness is a term that's used quite a bit. And what it means for me is that when the stakes are at its highest, players step up and reach that level. We had a number of guys step up and make great plays. But as I said, the 24-hour rule, we enjoyed the win, and that is now behind us. Our focus is on BYU. Our focus is on getting better as a football team. There are many things that we have to clean up fundamentally from this past weekend if we want to continue to grow as a football team. So that has really been the focus, and our guys are fully engaged in that. We'll get a chance to go out on the field today and go through a similar Tuesday. And again, I think the most important thing for our football team is to continue to do what they've done. They don't need to change anything. We don't need to add more to practice. We don't need to do anything else but pay attention to what we've done up to this point. So BYU, physical football team. So again, we don't leave the Big Ten. It's another physical football team that plays great defense. They've won a couple of close games this year on the backs of their defense. Offensively, they've got some big-bodied wide receivers, a quarterback who's a senior who can certainly make plays, well coached, and certainly from our end, we'll have to play well or we'll get beat. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Coach, can you give us an update on Everett's situation right now?
Yeah, he did not pass his COG test yesterday. He'll take it again this afternoon. And then we'll, obviously he passes today. We'll practice him on Wednesday, which has been kind of a similar routine. Last week it was turf toe that he wasn't able to go, and the week before it was his shoulder. So this is kind of business as usual. But, each kid is different. Each case is different. We'll take it day by day.
Before the season and often during the season, you've talked about how limiting turnovers is the single most important thing you want out of your quarterback. Everett's had a couple of rough weeks. He's been a little loose with the ball. Is he getting close to a breaking point where you might have to consider making a change? No, I think he understands that that's what he has to get better at, is taking care of the football. We don't talk in terms of, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to take you out of the game. He knows how important it is to take care of the football, and we've got to be more vigilant in practice. And we're going to make sure that, as I was talking to Coach Martin yesterday, that it's got to be pointed out every single time when that ball is not in a good position, because it's clearly something that has to change. How do you work on that? I mean, how do you get a guy to when he's running, he's got the ball out there, he's dangling it around. How do you rein him in like that?
Well, there are certain times he's going to carry the ball with one hand, and we understand that. But he's got to feel pressure. He's got to understand that covering the football up. He's got to understand when to get down. I mean, one of the fumbles that he had, he easily could have stepped out of bounds. And so a lot of this is first time from him. And we've got to make sure that he takes care of the football. He understands how important it is, and we're going to continue to make sure that we hold him accountable.
Is it possible you scale back the running a little bit, since that seems to be, where some of these are happening?
No, I don't think so. I think we probably have to continue to move him. I mean, that's one of the great strengths, is his ability to run. He's just got to take great care of the football, and we'll get through it. It's a painstaking process right now, but we'll get him to hold on to the football.
Thanks, Coach.
Brian, I know it's probably not as important for the winning coach, but have you had any, explanation with the controversy of the last play? How the instant replay was called, all that kind of stuff?
No, I haven't. Haven't asked for it either. We simply feel like we had made that play. We had guys in position to make the play. If the whistle hadn't blown, we feel like we were in good position to continue the play. We heard the whistle, and the play was over. So there's a number of plays that could have went either way. Everett's fumble, which was a huge play, it appeared that he stepped out of bounds. So I mean, you could microcosm the whole game and look at different things. Fact of the matter is that the game was officiated. It went to replay, and it was a great game.
You had some things happen in that game between fumble in the end zone. You have your first couple of deficits of the season. In the past, those kind of things happen. Things might go a different way. Where do you think the overall mental toughness that your team has displayed this year has come from?
Did you see me on the sidelines at all last year? I mean, this is a process. It just didn't happen, overnight. I mean, this is demanding, that mental and physical toughness. The pride and tradition in Notre Dame football will not be left to the weak, the timid, or non-committed. I mean, that's in our locker room. I mean, that was put up the first day I got here. So this is a process of developing that physical and mental toughness. Along the way, having some scars, where maybe it wasn't as evident. So this has just been a process of getting to this point, and now they see that. Now it's not just words in the locker room. It's not just a creed with a bunch of words. They're actually filled in now because it's starting. You can see it's starting to play in how they go to compete each week.
And then this obviously has the makings of the classic trap game. How do you avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, it's college football each and every week. Look to the North Carolina State, Florida State game. Go to West Virginia versus Texas Tech. Why does that happen? Well, you forget how you got here. They're trap games if you forget how to go to work and do those things. We'll certainly, we've already talked about it with our team, and we'll make sure that we do everything to prepare the right way.
This kind of fits in with that. I'm sure you set team goals at the beginning of the season with your guys. How do you balance that with kind of keeping your eye on the immediate task at hand?
Well, our team goals are based upon certainly how we perform from week to week. So we have specific team goals as it relates to how the game is played. For example, we want to be less than 15% of our plays that have mental errors, and we were above the cut there. So for each game, there are particular goals that we believe that if you hit those goals, you win football games. So we redirect that to the most important goal for us is to win on Saturday. And how are you going to win on Saturday? And that's the process and preparation. So the only goals that we really talk about, we don't have a list of goals that says, hey, we want to go to the Sugar Bowl, we want to go to the Fiesta Bowl, we want to win the national championship. We don't have any of those goals. They're not written down. You won't see them anywhere. They're not in our locker room. All you'll really hear us talk about are the goals as it relates to playing the game. And if you hit these goals, you got a great chance to win. And then how do you get there? And so that's how we deal with it on a day-to-day basis.
Why don't you have goals like that? Why don't you put up national championship or a certain bowl?
I just never felt like that that it kept you focused on the process. And you've heard it in nauseam from me. I've always, in my career, focused on the process. Those things take care of themselves, and that's how I've always managed my program.
Right here to your left, you mentioned the COG test that Everett failed specifically.
Yeah, well, there's a number of different things, Tim. First of all, there's a balance test, which he passed. There's also just an exam that he's passed, and then there are symptoms, whether it's sensitivity, agitation, light sensitivity, all those things he's passed. Then there's a computer test, a cognitive test that he has to pass, and he'll take that again today. Once he does that, he'll be allowed, to go back to practice. But again, I would say there is a protocol. There are standards. They are independent of the head football coach. This is strictly on our medical staff. They make all of those decisions, and they come to me and tell me when he's ready to go.
So he's close. I mean, he's close to passing it?
Yeah, and again, I would say that if Everett Golson was a guy that you knew, you would know when he's ready. When he's smiling and bouncing around, we're seeing that yesterday and today. So we're seeing great progress.
It looked like Troy Nicholas had kind of a tough day going against a great player most of the day, and if not him, the great player on the other side of the field. When something like that happens, I mean, obviously you would prefer he didn't have a day like that, but I would imagine there is a ton to be gained by having that experience against a great player as well. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's no question that he was challenged. He wasn't taken out of the game at any point. He was right in the thick of it. We put him in a role that some could argue was a difficult one for him to succeed in. What I loved about him, as I said earlier in my remarks about our team, is that only will help him as a football player because he went against such a very good football player. But he was there when we won late and contributed greatly to the success in the last drive where we were able to run the football effectively. So all those things are confidence building because he knows, hey, sometimes I got my butt kicked here. But late when he needed it, he made some really big blocks for us, and that just helps your confidence immensely.
And what is the corrective technique? I mean, what mistakes did he make technique-wise that you look at and say, hey, okay, you made this mistake. We can correct it by you just doing this.
He does what all long players struggle with, balance. He gets overextended. He's a big physical kid. He's 6'7", and he gets overextended quite easily. We got to continue to work on his base. We'll get him stronger, not necessarily from the waist up, but the waist below. When he gains more strength in the lower body, he's just going to be absolutely immovable, and that will come.
We saw Daniel Smith play a little bit. He caught a pass. He also did a good job of coming back and making sure that Everett's throw was not a grounding. What has he done to get himself back in the mix?
Goody was out. John probably would have been in those situations, so it was a next man in for Dan. And Danny's improved every week. It's the blocking part of him. We like him. He's a bigger physical guy out there in terms of blocking. But he's just a real good football player for us that when he gets his chance, he can get in there and help us.
And where is Goodman health-wise this week?
Good. He looks good. He had an epidural on Tuesday of last week. Responded pretty good. Actually came back Thursday, caught some punts for us. He would have been an emergency guy for us if we really needed him. He feels really good this week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ryan, to your right. On that 6-play defensive overtime, I think 12 guys that either tangibly made a play to help you win the game or that were involved in some way. Probably just the 13th guy as well. What does it say about kind of the toughness of your base defense to be able to do that?
Well, that's what we've been working towards, and as you know, we talked about this a lot earlier in the season about the number of guys that are getting playing time, that we can put them in at any time of the game and feel very confident that they can go in there and play at a high level. So building that depth, the dynamic is that everybody shares in that victory, which obviously, creates great morale within the ranks, all those dynamics that go with winning, but winning with depth and guys getting a chance to be part of it, obviously is that synergy is a real good thing to have.
And he by no means was alone on the play, but how much did it mean to Carlo after missing the first game this year that he is kind of I guess he'll be in the poster for making that stop at the end along with Shembo and some other guys? Yeah,
I mean, he's bounced back with really good football. Something that we knew Carlo, and he's helped us on special teams as well. So he's been a very good teammate, and he's contributed greatly to the success of our defense.
And the last one for me, a guy you and your staff identified in the spring as a guy that wouldn't be a problem in a young secondary was Bennett Jackson, and he seems to have improved, continually improves, if not every week. He keeps getting better. You just talked about his contributions last week.
Yeah, we thought this was a step up for him. We asked him to step his play up. We thought Kaveri Russell was catching him, and not that he had not been playing better, but we issued a challenge last week, and Bennett did a great job of stepping up his play. And putting himself in a very, very good position to help us. So we're really pleased with those guys and the progress they're making each and every week. Same thing with Matthias. We thought Matthias came back with a very solid effort. The one thing that you need from him is solid tackling. He put himself in a position to make tackles, and of course, the interception, he was in a pretty good position in coverage. So, we're getting those guys to improve each and every week.
Brian, up here, you mentioned the 24-hour rule a handful of times immediately in your opening asked about trap games. What are some of the specifics you're looking for this week that will give you confidence that, hey, my guys aren't falling into that trap game syndrome?
Well, I think we've all been at it long enough. I think they know, the seniors know, the veterans know how to practice, how to prepare, how to do the little things the right way. So I don't think it's a one-way conversation. I think it's more about, hey, we'll look at each other after practice and say, all right, is this where we need to be? And so I think when you get to this point where they understand what it takes to be successful, it's more of a two-way conversation. It's never about just the head coach coming before you and saying, all right, you didn't practice well today. What do you guys think? Was this the kind of effort necessary for us to continue to win? And I think that's where we are at the next step of our program, is that it becomes a two-way conversation with your players.
Last week's game was so physical and such hard hitting. How do you, I guess, rebound from that to try to keep it consistent, but also, I guess, maybe accommodate or acknowledge that, hey, you guys really left a lot out there. You may need to have some extra time to build it back up.
Yeah, Pete, I really look at our schedule and talk about, Purdue. I talk about Michigan State. I talk about Michigan. I talk about, having to play them week in and week out and that physical brand of football. BYU, as I mentioned in the outset, is kind of that same kind of team where with Stanford and BYU back-to-back weeks, we've responded well. I don't know that we know how to play any other way, but to have that kind of effort necessary. So I think if we had played a bunch of spread teams, coming into this game, we'd probably be a little bit more concerned about it, but we've already played this kind of physical brand.
Without Golsa today, how do you divide up the reps at quarterback in practice?
We'll make sure that he gets a lot of mental reps, and then Tommy Reese and Andrew will get probably go 60-40 today, would be my guess.
And I think a lot of people just look at stats and they see Sierra's averaging 2 yards more per carry than Theo. Could you kind of just talk about the rotation there, why it's good to play Theo and Sierra equally, regardless of somebody might just look at the stats and be like, well, wait a minute, Sierra's averaging 2 yards, he should have more reps.
I would agree. I think we're making way too much out of, per carry statistics. We're looking at circumstances in the game, play calls, our matching of our personnel versus the defensive personnel that's in the game. A lot of those things are not seen within the statistical numbers. So we think they're all very good backs. I think if there's any comment that needs to be made on the three running backs is we still have to continue to get more touches for George Atkinson. It's less about Sierra and Theo because they know their role. They've accepted their role. George has as well. We just think from a coaching standpoint, if there's anything amongst the three backs, we got to get George some more touches.
Just lastly, the teachable moment for Everett to just, hey, Tyler maybe double cover, just throw the ball up there. How much do you think he can benefit from that, kind of pushing the ball to Tyler maybe a little bit more than he has?
Well, there's a little bit more than just throwing it up there, I would say. We've worked hard on green grass throws where your movement key might be sinking. As you saw, the ball was put in a position where the defensive back had no chance of what we call raking through the basket, and we work very diligently on those throws. We just think that the air that he put on the ball, which was a level 2 ball, and where he put it, Tyler Eifert was the only one that was going to be able to catch that ball. And so I want to make sure that it's clear that that's something that he's worked hard at developing. He would have not made that throw in week 1 or week 2. He would have thrown a line drive, level 1 ball, and it would either been deflected by the corner who was sinking, or Tyler would not have gotten his hands on it.
So just following up on that almost, is this kind of the progression of countering almost defenses rolling to cover Eifert then?
I'm sorry, in terms of?
Just in terms of Golson making those throws as opposed to week 1 or week 2, is this almost your?
No, this is just the development of a young quarterback who's taking to coaching and understanding. Everett had his best 4 plays of the game with the last 4 plays that he was in there. I think probably his best play, and again, I'm going back to answer your question about the curve and the learning curve and his progression. He threw a ball out to TJ that seemed to flutter. He had somebody in his face. He set his feet. He stayed in the pocket. He didn't try to escape, which he did earlier in the game. So that learning curve is taking place series by series. And So to answer your question, that throw is something that he's developed into by being out there. That's the value and the benefit of him playing this year with 4 seasons of competition. And that's what I see. And those are the things that keep me moving towards seeing the positive things. I know there's others. He's got to take care of the football. He's got to set his feet. He plays sloppy at times, but boy, he competed his butt off. I couldn't be more proud of a guy in the way he competed.
And with TJ, too, is he kind of developing into that guy who can maybe be the option when they have double coverage on Eifert?
Absolutely, without question. I think if there's one guy singularly who's brought his game to a new level, and look, he's this is a cumulative effect on him as well. You know, TJ and I have had conversations along the way, in between plays, on the sideline. He's developing that mental and physical toughness, and he would tell you that. But more importantly, he's really focused on his craft and the skill of route running. All those little things that go to being a better football player.
Just last from me, you mentioned Andrew getting 40% of the reps. Is there a situation you have in mind where he could enter the game instead of Tommy Rees?
No, I haven't thought of it. I'm going to have 3 quarterbacks ready to play on Saturday.
Coach, along the lines of what Tim was talking about with Troy Nicholas, Mike Golick has been so solid. I think he started 10 games in a row, and yet it looked like on the replay it was like he did the same thing 3 times. Was there something that
in terms of the false starts?
Yeah, was there something that Stanford?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I could get into the specifics of it. It's poor communication. We got to do a better job communicating with the quarterback and the center. Really, that's. I mean, I could do a 2-hour clinic on this thing. It has to do with how it comes out, your voice inflection, all of those things. We have to do a better job. That's another area that we have to clean up. One week we don't have any, the next we've got 5. You know, so that's what keeps us here late at nights.
I wanted to ask you, too, about the coin flip. I know in the overtime you always want to get the ball first and get on the board. You didn't. I thought the second decision turned out to be a great one, and that was playing in our end of the field. It was a phenomenal atmosphere down there at the end of the game. Yeah,
pretty standard for me is that if obviously we're going to go on offense, we're going to make sure that if we're at home, it's going to be loud, and we're going to have that as an advantage for us. And certainly, you still have to make the plays, you still have to get in the end zone, but any time that we're confronted, unless the wind was clearly a factor in the game, I would choose wind over having a home field advantage, but wind was not a factor.
Brian, right here. At the midway point of the season, just curious overall how satisfied you are with the progress your team has made from when you guys started to where you've gotten to now.
Well, I think if you look at the individuals, we're really pleased with all of the individuals in our program, starting with Manti Te'o, who's kind of the guy that we put up there. His progress. Look, if he comes back for his senior year and we don't win a lot of football games, we're all disappointed. But if he comes back for his senior year and he doesn't develop as a player and as an individual, that's disappointing. So when you ask me that question, we look at it as how are the individuals developing within our program. And we're seeing great signs of young players and old players alike developing as football players. They're getting better. They're playing their best football later in their career. Mike Golick, Manti Te'o, TJ Jones. Then we got some young guys that, we got to take some of the lumps along the way. But I think that's how I look at it more than anything else in terms of the development of the individuals and the whole, the team. I'm pleased with that.
And your thoughts on where you guys stand in the BCS? And I know, but
really?
is 5 a good spot? Because it's a nice place, but there's still room to climb.
I really don't care. I'm sorry. I know all of our fans care a lot about that stuff, and that's great. I love seeing Notre Dame out there and having stories about Notre Dame. That's why we came here. But I really don't give it any thought as to positionally whether that's a better post position for us than, any other. Sorry.
Brian, can you talk about Tommy Rees and the way he has come off the bench now in 3 games? Is similar to a pinch hitter in baseball, especially on Saturday where he had to come off basically no warm-up and on the second play zing a pass to Eifert over the middle. Talk about how difficult that is.
I think you know how difficult it is. I mean, you know, it's freezing cold. No, I would say it's freezing cold. That's an overstatement. But it's raining. You know, it's chilly. And he's got to go, and then I have a chance to warm up, and he's got to go throw the football. He's just a guy that he's one of those guys that you can do that with. You can't do that with everybody. They don't have the makeup to be able to go in the game and check the play twice while the clock is ticking down and know that there's 6 seconds left on the clock and I'm going to get this snap off. Those things are experience, and then within your makeup. He's got those things. But I don't think he could do it without the experience that he had over the last couple of years.
Looking at the numbers, BYU's matches up very similar to yours statistically.
Yep.
Talk about the test for your defense, especially with their running game behind a big offensive line.
Good physical offensive line. Big-bodied receivers that can put you in a tough position. It's a good football team. It's a solid football team. They've made some mistakes along the way. They've had some close losses. You know, they're 21-21 in the fourth quarter against Oregon State, who's a top 10 team. I mean, so, you know, say whatever you want. Our kids turn on the film and look at BYU and go, that's a good football team. We're not turning on the film and looking at a team where the kids go, oh, these guys can't play. They're physical, play hard, and play for 4 quarters.
Talk about turning on the film. What do you see when you see Ogletree on film?
Well, first of all, they put him in a position where he can play downhill, physical. You know, Van Ooy, their edge players are outstanding. They're not as big and long as Stanford's players, but play just as hard and just as physical. A little quicker, maybe a little bit better in space than the Stanford players, but play a very similar scheme.
Finally, for me, your secondary has done a terrific job of avoiding penalties this year while making plays. Talk about how you work on developing that.
Well, I think, you know, we go one-on-one every day. And in those one-on-one drills, you know, we're talking to our offense or defense about whether that's a PI or whether you're holding them. And Coach Cooks, Coach Elliott, we're all talking offensively and defensively during that period of time as to how you play the ball. And it's being coached. It's not recess when we go one-on-one where just throw it up there and see what happens. We're coaching and communicating.
But it's been coached in other years too, and they haven't been as successful. Why is this unit as successful?
You know, I think it's a lot of it has to do with timing, and you know, we're not in a lot of man-to-man situations. You know, we don't play a ton of man. We play, you know, we play a lot of zone. So we usually have somebody over the top where we're not in a, you know, reaching, grabbing situation.
Coach, what's the development of Dan Fox from last year to this year? Where is he right now?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, he's a very physical player. Though I would not say that he wasn't physical last year. I think just overall knowledge of the position. You know, as you know, the will linebacker position for him was something new for him, and I thought he adapted very well last year. There were times that we thought that he was, you know, clearly the #1 player at that position. Now Carlo obviously has had a really good year, and those guys are sharing time. I think pass coverage would be the first thing. They had a dig Stanford behind him, and he got fished out by the underneath defender. He came in and pulled him out, and immediately came off the field knowing, I can't believe I got fished out on that play. Just, you hear things and you go, this guy really gets it and understanding. So I think the knowledge base has helped, and he's been physically not banged up. You know, he had that shoulder, and it really hampered him at times. I think he's been physically in a much better place as well.
And I don't know if it was him or just everybody on the sidelines, but there was a play, he was on the sidelines, and the defense was in a wrong alignment or something, and he started jumping up and down, trying to signal for the timeout. And
we were in the middle of the field. We had a couple of situations where we're in the middle of the field. We have to adjust our calls because we're working off of hashes, right and left calls. So if you're in the middle of the field, we had a couple of times where we had our dog on the wrong side of the field. he thought right was on this side when it was actually on the other side. Those are generally middle of the field alignment errors. So we had to go back, make a couple of adjustments. Coach Diaco did it at halftime, and we cleaned that up. But that's the situation. Danny knew exactly what was going on, that we were misaligned in that position. That's why we used the timeout.
So did he kind of initiate the
Well, I was on the headset with the defense, and I could hear him saying, get Prince over, get Prince over, and Danny's jumping up and down. And then I said, I'll take a timeout. I'm going to take a timeout. And they said yes, and we took the timeout.
How different a game manager are you now as the season's going on with the kind of defense that you have in terms of the way you call a game in general, both sides?
Well, I think I've always tried to do that, but you call a different game with the kind of defense that you had. As I've said probably many times, is that my background has been in the Mid-American Conference, and when I was at Cincinnati, you had to outscore people. So you're just like, defense, hold on. You're not thinking much about it. Whereas now you're really thinking about long fields. You're really thinking about how you can put your defense in a better position. With the turnover that we had, which consequently they didn't score, we weren't able to flip field position for about 9 minutes. And I'm thinking about that whole game, that turnover, although it didn't result in a score, it took us 9 minutes to get field position back for us. So I think a lot more about it now.
Brian, just to put a finer point on Golson's and getting a little speculative here, if he weren't to practice Wednesday, is that too late in the week for him to be part of the game plan if he starts practice? His first practice of the week is on Thursday?
We would probably limit some of the things that we do. There's very little that we can't do in the running game. We probably limit some of the things we do in the passing game and some of the things that we put on him. But he could practice on Thursday and be ready to help us on Saturday.
You talked about his growth and that you see it series by series and so forth. I mean, do you feel like you're close to kind of that breakthrough point with him?
Like at what level? that he never turns the ball over and makes solid decisions? No,
but I think you said you wanted to be on Saturday. You had to be a better passing team, and this certainly is a team that it would be fruitful to be a better passing team against.
I do. I mean, I don't know if it's a breakthrough moment, but I think just little things like I mentioned, the last 4 plays, I thought the throw that he made to TJ late in the fourth quarter where he had Murphy right in his face and he's, hung in there. And then the throw to Eifert, I don't think they're teasers. I really think those are the little things to build on. But we're still hopeful, as we go through another week that becomes more consistent. But I would say that we're definitely trending in the right direction.
With George Atkinson, I believe initially when you were recruiting him, you were looking at him as a wide receiver, kind of moved him to running back as necessity. Has he surprised you, I guess, as a running back, and is there still kind of that receiver element you'd like to bring out in him?
Yeah, I think we feel like we can throw the football. He's made great progress from camp until to the point we are right now, where we feel like we can put him in a route and he's going to catch the ball with his hands. He was not fun to watch in preseason camp when you threw the ball to him. And now he's snatching the ball with his hands. We've seen great improvement. I think the one thing that I'm really pleased with George is he sticks his foot in the ground now and he goes north and south. If you remember, there's a couple of plays. One in particular was the Miami game. They fired the corner off the edge. We ran a pitch to him. He couldn't bring him down. I mean, he's a big physical kid that now is playing not just as the speed guy, but as a guy that will put his foot in the ground and go north and south. That's why I continue to say we got to keep working to get him more touches.
With this being fall break, a couple things. Do you have more than 20 hours with your team? And also, do you try to keep them in a routine so that they're not sleeping in and all that stuff?
We keep it to 20. We don't want to change the routine. We bring him in. We don't want him sleeping until 1 o'clock. We got him out here right now. We had brunch at 11 o'clock, and then they have some captain-led film study today. So we're keeping them around, but we don't want to turn it into a situation where they got to be here like an NFL. We want them to relax a little bit as well.
And last one from me, you referenced something early in the press conference about did you see me on the sidelines last year? Have you taken a different approach just because this team is more mature, that they get who you are? Is it a little bit different on the sidelines?
Well, I think, in terms of, being here 3 years now, they know what I want from them on game day. They know the physical toughness I want them to play with, the concentration. This has been a process, and it has to start with the head coach. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't play out as good TV, but the fact of the matter is we need to set expectations of the way we wanted our program to move, and we're moving in that direction, and it doesn't require me to have those kinds of conversations.
Could you talk a little about, to clear up one thing, Everett did not practice on Tuesday the past 2 weeks because of those injuries you mentioned?
He was limited. He was limited, yes.
And the 60-40 split would be 60 for Tommy, is that right?
I mean, I don't want you to hold me to 60-40. I mean, if we go 58-42, is that all right?
Yeah.
I don't want to come back later and be fined. But certainly we're going to try to get a mix there where this is an opportunity where Everett can take a step today and take a look at things, and I can get both those guys who have not been getting a lot of reps. I want to get them more reps today, so we'll try to take advantage of that.
And if Everett couldn't go till Thursday, would that maybe raise the likelihood of using two quarterbacks on Saturday?
I don't know. I mean, those are a lot of hypothetical situations. I'm going to look. I'll tell you what. We're going to get three quarterbacks ready, and at what level they are, it'll determine. But we already know what Tommy's capable of doing. We know he just needs to clean up on some of the finer detail things. Andrew hasn't got a ton of work, and if Everett can't go to Thursday, then maybe we got to bring it down a little bit. But we're going to make sure that you have to defend a running quarterback that can run. That's going to be part of the game plan.
And does the off week help with the trap game in that there are not so many people around, students saying, hey, you guys are great and all that? Does it make it easier to focus on this game because there's less noise?
Nope. I think it's a trap game each week if you think that you can take a breather. You know what I mean? If you think you can go, I can take a breather now, it's mid-semester break. You know what I mean? We're screwing things down tighter. I mean, if that locker room is the mess, there's going to be a long practice today, and they know that. If the game room looks like a pigsty, there's going to be a long practice today. So my point is this. I think they're all trap games, every single one of them, if you take a breather. But if you just stay on the course, continue to do what you're doing, we'll be fine.
It's one of the challenges this week. Each week so far this year, the opponent's been telling me to either know, or in the Miami case, you could point to a history. This is the first game where, these guys haven't played don't even haven't played BYU in a while, and there's no real history here. So does this make it harder to get some sort of a sentiment going?
It's harder. The hardest game for us to prepare for offensively was the Purdue game because we had a new defensive coordinator, had no film. He had been in the Canadian Football League. We had no idea how it was going to go. Bronco has been the defensive coordinator for some time there. I mean, we know how they're going to play the game and conduct the game. So I think that's less of a concern.
And finally for me, what are you looking for going into the second half of the season, rushing-wise, from the tailbacks? What are you looking for the most improvement going ahead?
I just think discipline in running the inside-outside zones. We need to continue to work on that. Running north and south. We have a tendency to get too much of an east and west mentality. We want to be more north and south in the running game. And being the complete back and catching the ball out of the backfield, and when called on the block to be there. So those would probably be my list of things.
Let's see if there are any questions from any of the callers.
And for those of you on the telephone line wishing to ask a question, press star 1 at this time. Once again, star 1 to ask a question. And we'll hear from Brian Hamilton. Chicago Tribune.
Podium yet?
Go ahead, Brian.
Wanted to ask you a question about Tommy. Where does he rank in terms of backup quarterbacks that you've had in terms of mental adeptness and how smart he is about the game. Have you had a guy like that before?
I have. I would say that he certainly would be as good as any of the quarterbacks that I've had. My background, unfortunately, has been such that I've played more than one quarterback, so a lot of them have had that knowledge base. So he's as skilled as any of the quarterbacks that I've had in my career.
How much do you go to that? I mean, when you ask his opinion of things, how much of it is, I'm going to go with what I think and what Chuck thinks? How much do you value the input of the other guy who's sitting on the sideline watching things?
I'll ask him, did you see what I saw? I think more so kind of validating. Did you think that was, this particular coverage? Did you think that, he should have thrown the ball here? I'll ask him to kind of validate what I saw more so than, hey, do you got a particular play you like here? So I think it's more about validating some of the things that are going on. That's where I generally have a conversation with Tommy.
Just kind of switching gears to Cap real quick. I mean, had you not had a personnel loss last spring, he might not even be a starter. What kind of season has he had, and is this almost kind of a victory lap for him as a guy who's been through a lot in 5 years to be enjoying this success?
Yeah, a lot of growth as a leader in our football program. Yeah, certainly the dynamics there, which put him front and center now in that defensive line meeting room. He has taken that over. He is the guy that is respected in that room. There is clearly, from my end, a commitment from him to being a better football player. Not that he didn't want to be last year. I think he's evolved within this program over the last 3 years as much as any one player.
Thanks.
And next we'll hear from Jason Franchuk of Provo Daily Herald.
Hi, Coach. 2 quick questions, if I could. You kind of hit on Van Noy and Manti, and I understand they're different positions they play and everything, but are they totally different skill sets, or could Manti be a guy that gets to the quarterback really if you wanted him to?
Yeah, good question. I think both of those questions are such because they're not asked to do that. Both of them set their defense. Both of them are adjusters, so they're generally asked to do a little bit more in the passing game relative to coverages. So I think that's probably where we see the similarities. But I would agree with you. If they were asked to be guys to get after the quarterback, I think they're both very capable.
Well, Van Noy has 7.5 sacks this year. So, I mean, do you just see him, that Van Noy's maybe skill set isn't the same to be a middle linebacker like Manti, and Manti to be an edge guy?
No, I actually see Van Noy more as an edge player. Of course, that's where he plays. I just think that, the way they ask him to play, he gets the opportunity to get after the quarterback much more than Manti. But, he's a guy that is relentless like Manti. I mean, look, the great players have the same traits. It's just they're played at different positions, but they certainly could be interchangeable. I think if you ask me the difference between the two specifically, I'd want Manti running downhill, hitting the guard, and I'd want Van Noy exactly where he is, rushing the quarterback off the edge.
And last question, if I could. Manti was obviously recruited by BYU, Mormon kid, as you know. Do you get any sense there's any edge to him this week, that this game means anything extra?
No, but I know it's talked about a little bit. They all got a lot of family here. Manti's family's in town. Kona Schwenke's family's in town. And Robbie Toma's family. So they've talked about it. Chris Badger here, obviously, too. LDS. So there's been some conversation, but I don't know that card's really going to be played in terms of more motivation. I think they're motivated about getting better as a football team.
Thank you so much, Coach.
Yes.
And next we'll hear from Steve Wiltfong of 247 Sports.
Hey, Coach, a 2-part question regarding your defense. You've obviously been able to, land playmakers and build quality depth in the front seven with success on the recruiting trail that we haven't seen in recent years at Notre Dame. What has made your staff successful in this department? And then what are some of the things you guys hang your hat on and being able to develop these front seven guys into better players once they're in your program? Thanks.
Well, if you can sell Avon, you can sell Notre Dame. You got to knock on every door. You got to ring every bell. They're out there. You can find them. You just got to go get them. And so I think the charge to the staff was, let's go get these guys. This is what we need. Here's the blueprint for success. And we've been at that. I mean, we've been at it hard. We've had some successes. We've had some failures. We've had some good and bad situations that have occurred. But I think it starts with a plan and knocking on every door and finding them. They're out there, but you got to go get them.
Are there any other questions?
I can't believe I pulled that Avon analogy out. That was, I don't know where that came from. Feeling a little weak on that one.
Any other questions from the callers?
Next, we'll hear from Jay Drew of Salt Lake Tribune.
Coach, your athletic director mentioned the other day that Manti Te'o should be maybe a candidate for the Heisman or in consideration. I just wonder what your opinion on that is, and also where he would rank in terms of leadership as among the players you've coached over the years.
Well, I think as it relates to the Heisman, again, by its definition, he would be considered for that award. Now, we know where it's gone. It's gone to quarterbacks and offensive players. But, you know, again, you'd have to extrapolate this out. Where are we at the end of the season? All of those kinds of things. If you've got the #1 ranked defense in the country, I think he certainly is in the conversation, but we're 6 weeks into it. What I do know is that unquestionably as a leader, there has not been anyone in my 22 years that is a better leader both on and off the field and represent the kind of ideals that you want in college football than Manti Te'o. And I don't even think that's close. And I've had extraordinary young men that have played for me. So that I know for sure that as a leader and a representative of our program, unmatched.
And then kind of following up the question Jason asked, because of Manti's ties to BYU and the Mormon Church and that sort of thing, will you have to talk to him at all this week about maybe kind of keeping his emotions in check or anything, or is he mature enough that that doesn't really apply?
I think we'll know if that conversation needs to take place. With Manti, because we have so much conversation on a day-to-day basis, I would know or sense if there was something that was, you know, not right there. In other words, if there wasn't a good balanced approach to the game and what it meant. But I have no plans right now to talk to him about that unless I see something or I'm told something from other coaches or other players.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Brendan Gurney of Deseret News. Hearing no response, there are no further questions at this time.
Great. Thanks, everyone.